My son, keep your father's commandments, and do not forsake the Torah of your mother. Bind them to your heart forever, tie them around your neck.
Well, Shabbat Shalom, y'all. Who will be kept from the hour of trial? It says there in that verse, Revelation 3:10, because you have kept the word of my patience, I also will keep you out of the hour of trial, which is going to come upon all the world in order to try those dwelling on the earth. You know, as a pastor, one of my responsibilities is to prepare all of us for the very soon coming Great Tribulation and then the return of Yahshua. So we're going to examine this. And the title actually would be Ready or Not, the King is Coming. You know, I like that dream that you had, Gary, because it fits right in with what this message is about. And we've looked at this in the last couple of weeks, but we're going to be looking at several of the Bible references that Yahshua refers to, and so on. You know, there's a lot of times when you read the Bible, if you've read the Bible extensively yourself, and you've read over a particular passage, you know, a lot of times perhaps, and then all of a sudden it just kind of jumps off the page at you, so to speak. It has a new meaning because the Holy Spirit does that. You know, the Word of Yahweh is inexhaustible. I'm going to be showing you later on today, after the sermon, a short video of what's called the Bible codes. And you will be amazed, I do believe, at another layer of depth in Yahweh's Word. And when you see that short video I'll show you on the Bible codes, it's one of those things that just makes you almost drop your jaw open and say, wow, praise Yahweh. Anyway, the Holy Spirit brings things to our attention regarding specific scriptures sometimes that we have kind of passed over previously. Matthew 16 is one of those things, I believe, in my life. You know, there the Pharisees and the Sadducees were asking Yahshua to show them a sign. You know, they wanted some visual evidence. They must have been from Missouri, right? The Show Me State. You know, show us a sign. You know, prove who you really are. Or words to that effect. So here's what Yahshua said. He answered them, when evening comes, you say, it will be good weather because the sky is red. And in the morning, it will be stormy because the sky is red and threatening. Hypocrites, you know how to read the appearance of the sky, but you can't read the sign of the times. You know, he was very bluntly telling them that they were deaf and blind. And they were walking dead because they didn't know what time it was. They were not truly ready. See, that's what we are to be, though. We are to be ready. Not just talk about it. The things in our mind, we've got to be focusing on being ready. Thinking about it. Focusing on it in our lives. And given how bluntly that he was telling them, then we have to ask ourselves the question, are we ready? Are we truly ready? It's not something that you're going to be able to say, well, I'll get ready a little bit later on. Mañana. No, that's the wrong attitude to have. If we do that, then we are in the same boat as the Sadducees and the Pharisees, walking dead. You know, the Apostle John said over here in the book of 1 John chapter 2, little children, it is the last hour. Well, if it's the last hour when he wrote that, what is it now? It's the last minute of the last hour, I reckon. He wrote that over 1900 years ago. It was the first century, the last part of the first century when he wrote that. It has to be the last minute now. We're at the very end of the end. The return of our Messiah And then, the Great Tribulation, of course, will be happening before that. Maybe the Great Tribulation is going to start this fall. I don't know. There are some things that point to that, but I'm not a prophet. I can't tell you that. I try to put some things together by what I read and what I study and so on, but as far as having a gift of prophecy, I don't have that. Tom Horn had that vision I mentioned a while ago about the asteroid that NASA has called Apophis. They've named an asteroid that's going to be, they say, skimming by the Earth on April 13th, 2029. And he said that back in, I think it's 2018, that Yahweh gave him a vision that is going to hit in the Pacific Ocean on that day. And there's going to be the most, I would say, the most tragedies and the most calamity that has ever hit this earth since the flood. It's going to cause worldwide damage. This earth will not recover from that. So I reiterate, it's my opinion. I don't want you to think that I am trying to predict that. But I am taking that is a great, great possibility. It all depends on whether the Antichrist will be revealed in the next few months. If the Antichrist is revealed, I would say, yeah, it's going to be. The Great Tribulation will be starting extremely soon. So John says here, little children, it's the last hour. He's giving an urgent message, as I'm doing today. It's intended to create a good kind of panic, not a wild kind of panic, not a chaotic panic, but the kind of panic where you say, am I ready? Am I really ready? What do I need to do to get ready? And so on. It should motivate each one of us to get our house in order, should it not? Those of us who are baby boomers, we remember the Jesus people from back in the 60s and 70s. All over the world, people were coming into the faith of Yahshua by the droves, it seemed like. If you read anything about that, or if you were around during that time period, you heard about it, or you saw some of those things. Thousands of people were waiting in line to get into tent services all around the United States and even around the world. And those services were going on for 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours. Some people complain because I preach sometimes 1 hour. I don't mean any of you, but there have been some on the internet say, that's too long. When Yahweh's word is being preached, we need to pay attention. That's all there is to it. We need to be paying attention. During that what they call the Jesus Revolution, back in the 60s, and 70s, I was in Bible college up in Minnesota. And I remember hearing about those things happening in other Bible colleges and other colleges. It didn't happen in my Bible college. I guess our Bible college was too spiritual or something. Tongue-in-cheek, okay? I'm not serious there. A couple of friends and I, we thought about visiting a nearby college where it was happening, but we never really did. We just thought about it. Week after week, though, there were preachers that were preaching, Jesus is coming soon, Jesus is coming soon. I remember a movie came out about the same time called A Thief in the Night. Maybe some of you remember that. Interesting. If you ever get a chance to watch it, it's from a pre-tribulation point of view. But the point of getting ready for Yeshua's return is the key thing in that. It created quite a stir, and rightfully so, because Yeshua is returning soon. John said it, and we know it's happening. But I don't see the same urgency today in Yeshua's congregations. There's a very complacent spirit, it seems. Look what Peter says here. But the end of all things is at hand. Therefore be serious and watchful in your prayers. John and Peter were on the same page. They knew the same things. They wanted people to listen because the end of everything is at hand. We better get serious and watchful. That word serious means not to accept an illusion. This world is one big illusion. It's one big lie. And I see that truth sinking into some surprising people. Tucker Carlson has even alluded to that. For those of you that have heard the name or paid any attention about him, Tucker Carlson, a guy by the name of Ryan, I can't remember, Sean Ryan. And he has said these exact words, everything's a lie. And it is. Every institution that we are familiar with, education, politics, religion, it's all a lie. So Yahweh wants us to be serious and have a clear mind to know what's going on. You know, in Ezekiel, he gives another warning here. Look what he says in Ezekiel chapter 30. Son of man, prophesy and say, Thus saith Yahweh Elohim, Wail, woe to the day, for the day is near, even the day of Yahweh is near. It will be a day of clouds and the time of the Gentiles. You know, the Holy Spirit put those words in Ezekiel's mouth, told him to write it. Ezekiel was a true prophet. He was a watchman. You and I are to be watchmen. We are to tell other people the truth about what's happening. That's why it's so vital for you and I to get the gospel of the kingdom out. That's part of the duties of a watchman. And as a watchman, he emphasized the urgency of the message. Isaiah did the same thing. Look what it says here in Isaiah 13. Wail, for the day of Yahweh is at hand. It will come as destruction from the Almighty. Therefore all hands will be limp. Every man's heart will melt, and they will be afraid. Pangs and sorrows will take a hold of them. They will be in pain as a woman in childbirth. They will be amazed at one another. Their faces will be like flames. Behold, the day of Yahweh comes, cruel, with both wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he will destroy its sinners from it. You know, Yahweh is going to be returning in anger, in vengeance. He's not going to be all sweetie, sweetie, nicey, nicey. Not at all. You know, when he came the first time, he came to seek and to save that which was lost. And he died on the cross ultimately and paid the price for our sin. When he comes the second time, you see part of the description right here. And he's not coming to seek and to save that which is lost when he comes. He's coming to be vengeful against his enemies. And we need to be ready. In the 59th chapter, Isaiah says, he talking about Yahweh, he put on righteousness like a breastplate and a helmet of salvation on his head. He put on garments of vengeance for clothing, and he wrapped himself in zeal as a cloak. So he's coming with anger, vengeance. He will not be coming to put a pat on the back of his enemies. He'll be coming to destroy his enemies. And he will destroy them. We all experience pain and sorrow and fear during this lifetime. We don't have any idea what it's going to be like during the tribulation. When our Messiah is revealed from heaven, his purity, his infinite holiness, there's going to be a tremendous fear that sweeps across the entire world. There won't be people mocking him when he comes. That will not be happening. People will be bowing before him. Every knee shall bow, every tongue shall confess that Yahshua is the Master. Yahshua said here in Revelation 22, Behold, I'm coming quickly, and my reward is with me, to give to everyone according to his work. Quickly there means quickly. Now, I realize that you and I say, well, that was written almost 2,000 years ago. Well, it was. And if it was quickly back then, how much more right now? How much more right now? And he says, my reward is with me to give to everyone according to his work. What works do you have to show that you are a child of Yahweh? You've got to have some kind of works. Works don't save you, but works prove who you are really walking with. You and I need to take a personal inventory. What have you been meditating on the last few days? What occupies your mind? Are you concerned with things of the world? Are you worried about things? Are you concerned with building your personal little kingdom here? Are you just occupying? Are you just sitting around or basically waiting for the end? You're spending most of your time making plans for this or for that. You're trying to increase your personal wealth. Are you focused on the long to-do list in your life? How much time do you spend in the Word and listening for Yahweh to speak to you? How much time do you spend in prayer? How much time do you spend in front of the television or on the internet taking counsel from the world that's full of witchcraft today? You know that what you spend your time thinking about can very well be the idol of your life. It can be an idol. Doesn't matter what it is. Wealth, marriage, accumulating things, any of those things can become an idol. And when you start to evaluate what you've been meditating on and see how much time that you've invested in all these cares and concerns of the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, there's no way that you can convince Yahweh or anyone else that you believe the principles of these verses that we've been looking at the last few minutes. If you really believe in what those verses say, you'd be immersing yourself in the Word of Yahweh. The time is too short to do otherwise, folks. And you would have an urgency to spread the gospel of the kingdom. Who is going to hear if you don't tell them? Who? There are some people that you know that I will never have contact with. And Yahweh has chosen you to be their friend or their acquaintance. So it's your responsibility to give out the gospel of the kingdom. Once a person starts to focus on those things of the kingdom, of getting themselves ready for Yahshua, a refining process begins to happen within them. When you begin to feel the weight, the enormity of Yahshua's return, when you actually believe he's coming soon, it will cause a huge change. You will begin to get clarity of mind because the Holy Spirit will help you to see things in the right priority. You will see the wickedness of this world, and you'll want nothing to do with it. You'll see the deceptions of this world, and you want nothing to do with it. You will hate it, because you know the great tribulation is almost here, and Yahshua is about to be revealed. Will you be a sheep or a goat? This should be your all-consuming thought. Look what the Apostle Paul says in Romans chapter 13. And do this, knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of your sleep. For now our salvation is nearer than when we first believed. The night is far spent, the day is at hand. Therefore let us cast off the works of darkness, and let us put on the armor of light. You and I are to know what time it is. We are to know it. We're not to be like the Pharisees that Yahshua rebuked and called hypocrites because they did not know the time. We are to get ourselves in the right relationship with Yahshua. Stop chasing the things of this world. Those things just lead to destruction. We don't have time to build our own little kingdom here. And Paul says in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, as we do not focus on the seen, but on the not seen. For what is seen is transitory. For what is unseen is eternal. These things that we look at now around the world, they're just temporary. They are not going to be here forever. The kingdom is eternal. The millennial kingdom, first of all, 1,000 years long. And then when all sin is put away and all death is put away, then the eternal kingdom will start. I'm looking forward to both of them. I am desperately looking forward to both of those. We must have our eyes fixed on Yahweh and His Word. Ellen White's not going to help someone in the tribulation. There's no person that's going to help another person in the tribulation except Yahshua. We have to have our eyes fixed upon Him. Wealth is not going to help. Marriage is not going to help. Only Yahweh's Word will. We've got to shed all of those worldly things, worldly thoughts, and seek first the kingdom of Yahweh. Look what it says here in James chapter 5. You also be patient, establish your hearts, for the coming of Yahweh is at hand. Do not grumble against one another, brethren, lest you be condemned. Behold, the judge is standing at the door. He's at the door, folks. All these men that we've been reading about, from their writings, the last several minutes, they're all saying the same thing. And they're all looking forward to what this is talking about here. They were all looking forward to it. They didn't see it, but they will be resurrected and experience it. Praise Yahweh. But if you're looking at the world, you're not going to be able to listen. People, even nowadays, say, well, it's going to be a long time. It's going to be a long time. He's not coming until 2050. I'll be dead by then. He's not coming until then. I don't believe that for a second. Not for a second. Complacency will kill good works. Complacency will kill a congregation. There are many congregations around that are very complacent. They're dead. The Bible talks about them, particularly in Revelation chapter 2 and chapter 3. Yahshua addresses his various congregations, and whether they're Baptists, or whether they're Church of Christ, or whether they're even Catholic, or whether they are Seventh-day Adventists, he nails every one of them in those letters. And there's several of them that he says, you're dead. Now, it doesn't mean they're literally lifeless as far as their body goes, but the congregation is dead. They're complacent. Laodicea. What did he say to Laodicea? He said, you're not cold and you're not hot. You're lukewarm. That's complacent, folks. And he said, because you are lukewarm, I want to spit you out of my mouth. Complacency will cause him to vomit people out of his mouth. That's an individual thing, by the way. That's individual. It says in Psalm chapter 95, O come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before Yahweh our Maker, for He is our Elohim, and we are the people of His pasture and the sheep of His hand. Today, if you will hear His voice. He's calling us. He's calling us. Come and worship me. Come. Remember what He said? He said, come all of you who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. We have to turn to Him. We don't want to be turning to other things in order to find protection or comfort or whatever. We need to turn to Yahshua. He is our solid rock. He is our source of comfort. And He's the one that's coming soon. He says, today, if you will hear His voice. With the kingdom gospel, when you preach the kingdom gospel, when you just give out a tract Whether it's this one here that says, will you be protected or suffer, or thy kingdom come. There's another one I had back there too about bridge over troubled water. Doesn't matter which one. They've all got the gospel in them. And do it with urgency. Hey, would you take that? It's got a good message. You know, there's a man that here in Glenwood that he's a homeless man. We see him walk past here sometimes. And he was sitting in front of the dollar store the other day, yesterday. And I said, can I give you one of these tracts? He said, no. And so I said, well, I'm just going to leave it here beside you anyway. He said, okay. I don't know if he read it. I don't know. But I want people to know the gospel. It didn't take hardly any effort on my part at all. I spoke less than 24 words. I don't speak a lot of words unless I'm preaching. No comment. You know, the book of Hebrews repeats what it says here in Psalm 95. Look what it says here, whoever wrote Hebrews, I believe the Apostle Paul. Because of this, even as the Holy Spirit says, today, if you will hear his voice, do not harden your hearts to provoke him as in the rebellion on the day of testing in the wilderness. You know what that day was? That day of rebellion? That's when Yahweh told Moses to send 12 spies into the land. Check out the land. So he sent 12 spies out, and they were gone for a month and a half, and they came back, and they had, you know, if you've ever seen a drawing of it, called the grapes of Eshcol. And there was a clump of grapes. Shows in this drawing, there's a big stick between two men, and they are holding a huge clump of grapes that almost drags the ground. Now, our grapes around here don't do anything like that. And I've got some of those little pig grapes in my yard. You know, they're not even half as big as my little fingernail. I don't know how they taste. I'll find out when they ripen up. But you know, those spies, 10 of those spies said, oh, we can't do it. They're giants in the land. We're like grasshoppers. 2 of the spies says, we can do it. In the name of Yahweh, we can do it. Come on, let's go. And the people sided with the 10 spies, and they rebelled. And then Moses said, you have rebelled against Yahweh. And they said, oh, we're sorry. Okay, we'll go now. And Yahweh said, well, you won't have my protection. And a bunch of them got killed. See, we have to obey Yahweh when he says to go, when he says get ready, when he says, are you ready for the coming of my son Yahshua? We need to get ready. We don't want to put it off. We don't want to have an idea in our mind that it's okay to delay or anything of that matter. Again, Apostle John says, little children, it's the last hour. As you have heard, the Antichrist is coming. In the very near future, folks, in the very near future, the Antichrist is going to appear, and he will be around when Yahshua actually returns. He will be one of the first ones that will be cast into the lake of fire. Then he goes on. Look what he says here. Even now many antichrists have come, by which we know that it is the last hour. Now it says many antichrists. There's one antichrist that will appear at the end of the age. I've talked about him quite a bit the last few weeks. But there are many antichrists that are currently around. They don't have the title of the Antichrist, but they have the attitude and the spirit of the Antichrist. And Apostle John is using the word Antichrist here in the same way that he uses the terminology false prophets and deceivers. Look at what else it says. 1 John chapter 4, Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits, whether they are of Yahweh. Now this last phrase is the one I want to draw your attention to. Because many false prophets have gone out into the world. See, John uses those terms interchangeably. Now, I'm not saying it's the same exact term. Not in the Greek language, it's not. But he's using the terminology Antichrist, false prophet, deceiver interchangeably. You can just substitute one for the other. And then he says here, going on in the same verse that we looked at a moment ago, Little children, it's the last hour, as you heard, the Antichrist is coming. Even now many Antichrists have come, by which we know, and look at that last phrase there, they went out from us. They went out from us. Where did these Antichrists, these false teachers, these deceivers, he said they went out from us. Now think about this. Think about this for a moment. The first century church, and he read the assembly, the first century assembly that John was a part of establishing, along with all the apostles, the most powerful assembly in the history of the world. Miracles are being done right and left. And yet he says they went out from us. Well, if those deceivers and false prophets or false teachers and antichrists went out from them, what about now? All the more so now. We are surrounded by false teachers. Now, false teachers, a lot of them don't even know they're false teachers. That's the sad thing. They don't even know it. They have just accepted what's called, I'd call status quo. Doctrinal status quo. What do I mean? Well, for instance, my dad. My dad was the most godly man that I've ever known. I wish that you could have met him, because you would have agreed. And you would have said, well, what happened to you, Daryl? My dad was a godly man. He was a graduate of New Bible Institute. And he worshiped on the day of the sun. And he celebrated Ishtar Day, Easter, a pagan holiday. You don't celebrate something that's pagan and say, I'm 100% right with Yahweh God. No. My dad was a product of doctrine. His doctrines that he was immersed in. He was immersed in those things. Moody Bible Institute, D.L. Moody, R.A. Torrey, Kenneth Wiest, and some of those men that taught there and such. Famous names. It saddens me greatly. I know I'll see him in the kingdom, but he won't be ruling and reigning. You don't rule and reign if you are involved in paganism to any degree whatsoever. That much. If you're involved in paganism to any degree, a Sunday worshiping, if you're involved in Sunday worshiping, if that's a habit in your life, folks, you're not going to be ruling with Yahshua. You have to put all that stuff aside. Wipe it away. They went out from us, he said. Those are that first century assembly had the apostles in it. They had all seen Yahshua after the resurrection. We followed them because they followed him. And yet it was producing antichrists, false prophets, false teachers. And these apostles have been warning us about antichrists and false teachers way back then, from way back then. How much more? We're on the very edge of Yeshua's return. My friends, I plead with you to be aware, to wake up to the closeness of the great tribulation and of Yeshua's return. Ready or not, Yeshua's returning soon. The Berean. Till next Sabbath. Shabbat Shalom.